You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Kelly Barner, and today is Friday, February 10th, 2023.
6.
This week's Procurement 6 is brought to you by the people who are bringing you the Super Bowl. If you're a business watcher like me, you watch Super Bowl commercials in a very unique way. I mean, we all love the commercials, right? But what can we learn from them? Here's what I watch for. What companies or industries are making a new appearance? Which longtime advertisers are suddenly missing? What is the mix of heartfelt and funny? Companies spend a ton of money on these spots. $7 million for 30 seconds is the going rate in 2023. And we might as well benefit from the research and preparation they had to do to make the most of that investment. So enjoy the game, and of course, enjoy the food this weekend if you'll be watching. But don't forget to watch the commercials closely, too.
5.
In this week's episode of the Art of Procurement podcast, Philip Eidson welcomed return guest Mark Holyoke, a recruitment specialist who focuses on procurement. In addition to talking about the surge in demand for procurement professionals, how that is affecting salary negotiations, and just how long he thinks the trend will last, Mark talked about how news of recent layoffs, especially in the tech sector, may or may not impact procurement. Let's listen in.
Yeah, it feels very personal, right?
Mhm.
When it happens to you, and when you again consider your situation against the backdrop of what you're reading in the press, it's very easy to think that there's sort of no hope for procurement recruitment in the next 6 to 12 months, and I just don't think that's the case, right? Tech is obviously reducing its workforce significantly, but I read a report recently. Those numbers still pale in comparison to the number of people that those exact same companies hired over the last three years, right? So again, it doesn't sting any less, but I don't know that is is necessarily representative of an upcoming sort of downturn, a massive downturn that's going to that we're going to see across all different industries, right? We look at tech, okay, but we look at life sciences; they're growing like crazy. Mm-hmm. We look at maybe fintech, even some financial services. Again, we're seeing a lot of demand in those industries, and for every, let's say, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 company that's announcing, wide-scale layoffs, there is a $1 to $3 to $5 billion firm that is just super excited about their upcoming investment in procurement, and being able to, go out there and attract individuals in the market that they might not normally have access to. And so, part of what I think job seekers need to do is consider companies, outside of the traditional areas in which they have operated, and acknowledge that there is absolutely still a significant demand for their skills. And it's not going to be the same kind of market as it has been over the last 12 months. They need to acknowledge that. But overall, it's a positive market. There is demand for their skill. They're just going to have to be a little bit more flexible in terms of, what they're prepared to look at, the kind of companies, the kind of industries, and consider again, opportunities that sit outside of where they might normally have considered.
So just as procurement needs to be creative in problem solving, we need to be creative when we manage the trajectory of our career. And as Mark pointed out earlier in the same conversation, the road leading into procurement is not one way. so we need to be open to other options. If you'd like to hear the entire interview, check out the link in the show notes, visit artofprocurement.com/podcast, or search for Art of Procurement wherever you listen to podcasts.
4.
As part of Art of Procurement's partnership with Procurement IQ, we bring you regular looks at specific categories through the Buyer Power Score, information about the competitive landscape, and cost drivers. This week, we profiled pest control services, one of my favorites from back in my practitioner days. The current recommendation is to buy now, meaning lock in pricing and service levels. And there are 3 reasons why. First is the cost of fuel. Like everything location-based, that is a key cost driver. The second is the cost and availability of labor. Labor costs are up, but with so many options, competition is fierce. And working in pest control may not be everyone's first choice line of work, so turnover can potentially be an issue. And then finally, regulation. The chemicals and methods, I'll spare you the details, used for pest control are constantly under review and subject to revision at the state and federal level. Make sure you pick a provider that is staying on top of the latest requirements. For more information, check out the link in this week's show notes or visit procurementiq.com.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
If you are catching this podcast on or before Saturday morning, February 11th, we have a LinkedIn poll open that you may want to vote in. Procurement's efforts are so often a struggle between short-term issues and longer-term vision, but some pressing issues are easier to look past than others. So here is our poll question. Which of the following short-term issues do you find the most disruptive? The choices are supplier price increases, supply availability, sudden changes in business strategy, and talent shortages. You'll find the link to vote in today's show notes. And then, of course, I invite you to join the KPMG, Coupa, and Art of Procurement teams on February 28th for a live discussion about building business resilience for short-term agility and long-term growth. If you just want to register, you'll find the link to that in the comments as well.
2.
This week, I posted a new book review on Buyer's Meeting Point. Start for Success by Jan Cavell is written for entrepreneurs, sort of. I would also recommend it for anyone tasked with running a large corporate team or anyone who considers themselves an intrapreneur. In addition to covering traditional startup topics like leadership structure and funding, Jan also talks about finding your tribe. She writes about understanding the value you offer to each potential customer. And she covers all of the work that has to go on behind the scenes, with 0 accolades, I might add, before big publicly celebrated successes can occur. I highly recommend the book, and we'll share a link to the full review on today's episode page.
1.
Art of Procurement Digital Outcomes officially kicks off next week and will run virtually on Wednesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. Join the whole Art of Procurement team as well as 10 other speakers for a wide-ranging discussion around digital pilots, crossing the chasm, rejecting the idea of failure, and cybersecurity. As always, registration is free, but make sure you sign up before the event goes live. All pre-event registrants will secure immediate access to the event live on demand. But if you miss the boat, you're going to have to wait a month or so before we open access back up again. I hope to see you there.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.